Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to keep things both spooky and spiritual with the recent Witch's Tale of the Wretched. If you've ever wanted to open up a skin flap and let someone just climb on in, subscribe to the channel. Let's get to it. We open on a well-played yard outside a small home 35 years ago. A young lady in a raincoat approaches the house and lets herself in. She's here for a babysitting gig and is looking to relieve the parents of their duties. But the house is quiet and the phone is off the hook. She checks in with her mom to let her know she's arrived and prematurely assesses everything to be all good. Then she hears a door close, so she hops off the horn and again goes looking for the residents of the household, eventually venturing into the dark basement. She follows some squishy sounds and discovers that Joanne failed to notify her that they wouldn't be needing her services that evening. Rude. And then she gets locked in the basement. We then flash forward to 5 days ago, where Ben, our protagonist, dreams of drowning, but is actually on a bus that drops him off at the outskirts of a small town where folks like to go just to slow down a little bit, do things a little differently, you know? He's come to visit with his dad, recently separated from his mom, and he's going to be roughing it.
Your TV doesn't have an HDMI port.
You see, Papa's into using the whole universe as his TV, and he also likes getting deep, bringing up Ben's arm injury, a topic they ultimately save for another time. The next morning, Ben notices they have some new neighbors who Liam doesn't actually know. They get a lot of temporary residents due to all the vacation homes in the area, a fact that is helpful for the family business, a nearby harbor that Liam runs. Ben does his best to maintain order and make Daddy proud, but he also has a hard time asserting his authority to the local Chads. He's quickly distracted from this failure when he meets Mallory, who's a little bit different. You know, she's not like other girls. She busts his balls a little and then agrees to show him the ropes. Despite this, he sees his dad canoodling with his new lady, and it puts him right back into a sour mood. Meanwhile, nearby in the woods, we see the new neighbors venturing off-trail into the vast wilderness, a perfect plan for amateur hikers. Along their way, we observe some familiar markings on the trees. When Dylan gets separated from his mommy, he thinks he hears her calling gently, and then aggressively demanding he come give her a hand inside this dark hollow. But when Abby reveals herself to be elsewhere, it snaps him out of it, and the mysterious tree disappears. Back at the house, we see that Abs struck a buck on her way home, and is planning to get all up in them guts. But as she proceeds to carve open her prize, she finds that she likely perforated the liver, as the rancid internals spill out all over the truck. They go ahead and leave the cleanup for another day, pretty much ensuring it'll be a far worse job, and we see that their dear friend had his own little friend hiding out inside, presumably looking now for the warmth of a new body. Ben wakes up that night to the sound of footsteps upstairs, but since he's on the top floor, that means the roof. So he goes poking around and finds a raccoon under the neighbor's porch. Before he can make any additional zoological discoveries, the floodlight comes on. They have a brief interaction and then all go back to bed. The next morning finds Ben rushing around to make it to work on time, and he has only a moment to warn Dylan away from the raccoon hole. On the drive in, he also tells his dad that he wants to meet Sarah, his potential new mommy. Later on, he tries to enjoy the simple pleasure of having a porn break at work, but he gets busted in on and learns that Mallory may have a crush on him. While back at home, we see the plant life in the area is wilting. Thinking further of the prior night's experience, he makes a deal with Dylan. Free access to the popsicle supply so long as Dylan promises to let him know if anything strange happens at his house. Then he's off to the C-store to complete the impossible task of locating gluten-free dinner rolls to accommodate Sarah's dietary needs at their dinner that evening. Here, Mal provides an alternative option for him, coming to a wicked teen party full of sexual degenerates. He's slow to turn, but does eventually succumb to the call and ditches out on his dad. This proves to be a good move because this party is raunchy, my friends. He and Mal hide away to play a little truth game, and we learn that Ben's a bad boy, having broke his arm after jumping out of his neighbor's second-floor window, while trying to escape capture after breaking in to score some Vicodin. After they each bare their secrets, he feels the mood right to make an attempt, but he yaks in her lap. Back at our couplet of homes, Dylan hears a strange noise, and it's loud enough to wake the baby. Abby goes to check on him, and everything checks out okay, but only because she can't muster the effort to watch for a few seconds longer. Meanwhile, back at the party, Ben willingly allows himself to be thirst-trapped into the pool, in the hope it'll work out to his benefit. It does result in some naked, splashy games with a naughty girl, but as could be predicted, this was just a setup to a classic bad boy prank. Unfortunately, it also destroys his budding relationship with Mallory. After a bit, Dylan wakes up Abby, who checks the monitor again before going to check on the old baby. This time, she finds that he's gone, but has been replaced with a bundle of twigs, so they're even up. Before she can process this, she gets dragged under what must be a remarkably tall crib, which is followed by some squish noises. Ben arrives home from his fresh failure just in time to see her wandering off into the woods, baby in hand. But Liam rolls up before he can address this. He was concerned for Ben's safety and tries to force him to apologize for what he did. The resulting outburst about Sarah—
I'm not apologizing, some bitch you're sleeping with.
turns awkward when we find that she's actually still there. The next day, we see that Abby has returned from her sojourn into the woods and is just hanging out around the house. Then Ben heads into work and takes a moment to prank the pranksters. While back at the house, Dylan goes looking for his mom to make him a sandwich and is startled to find her standing nude in the hallway. Ben arrives home after a long workday and hears some strange noises upstairs. He sneaks up and finds that Dylan and his rabbit now occupy his room. Dylan is looking for a place where his mom won't be naked and begs Ben to not let her into the house. He tries to talk his way out of the situation and set some clear boundaries, but Abs is insistent on coming in and decides to get nasty about it.
You're a very stupid boy.
What a savage! And then when Daddy arrives, Dylan runs right out, exposing Ben's lies. And then he starts to get the sense that something's not quite right here. As Dylan gets tucked in, he tries to warn his dad about how Mom's been acting weird.
You should have seen her at Burning Man.
Not like that, you turd. Mallory then calls Ben after finding a peace offering he left for her. But his priorities are still all jacked as he's too distracted by watching his neighbors prepare to sex each other hard. The lights do get turned out for Ben, but not for us, and we witness some mirror shenanigans going down. The next day, Ben finds that Dylan no-showed for his sailing lesson, so he scrambles off to check on him. But when he arrives at the house, Dylan's dad insists that he doesn't have any kids, and he maintains this despite Ben's best arguments to the contrary. Since Ben is pretty sure he has kids, this makes him awfully suspicious. So he takes the obvious first step of checking for evidence under the welcome mat, and he finds a symbol that's familiar to us. We find out that this was all he needed to really blow the lid off this thing, as he takes a picture and does an image search, which leads him down an internet rabbit hole about a body-hopping witch from folklore who feeds on children. As he tries to convince Mallory of the danger, we also learn that he boned up on witch-repelling techniques by watching Hocus Pocus, and they both get creeped out as Abby spookily throws away some garbage. But Mal has to get back to work because they're not all privileged enough to work for Daddy, so she stirs the pot, leaving a little message for them as she goes. This almost drives the neighbor to the cellar, but then Abby hits him with some witchy enticements that take purchase in his ear. The next morning, domestic activities continue in the normal mode, and Abby gets in a rejuvenating shower as she tries to keep her skin from slagging off. She then goes to visit Ben before he can complete his salt circle and gives him back the note. So now he knows that she knows that he knows. Fed up, he gets the bolt cutters and uses them to smash in the cellar door. Downstairs, he finds a creepy little shrine and a picture of Mallory and her sister. He calls to warn her to watch her sister, but she has no idea who he's talking about. Ben tries to rush in to play the hero, but is waylaid when it comes time to pay his tab for past transgressions. This results in him making it into the woods just a little bit too late, and then he bonks his noggin, putting an end to any hope he had of pulling Lily out of the tree. When he gets back home, he finds there's a whole to-do about his breaking into the home next door. Since he has a history of this and of going around hopped up on goofballs, his story of missing kids and witchcraft don't go over well. When Ben retires to the kitchen, he finds Sarah there, suspiciously taking her coffee with a buttload of cream, just like witches do. And then the plants in the area begin wilting, just like as if in the presence of witches. So he salts her, and then just digs himself deeper as there's no choice now but to have him arrested. As they drive off, Ben realizes that the officers are also victims of the witch's whispers. But luckily, Liam is restless enough that she doesn't quite get him before he heads out the door. The arresting officer decides to forego all that pesky paperwork by taking Ben out to a secluded field where he can just drown him and say he got lost along the way. But right as Ben goes limp, he's saved by a friendly dog, or a dog that's unfriendly depending on whether or not you're a police officer. The resulting emotional turmoil causes the officer to kill himself. Back at home, Liam decides to trust his son for once and goes to check out that cellar, but he sees the neighbor going into the garage instead, so he follows him in and up the stairs. Here is where he finds the new shrine to witchcraft, along with Abby's hollowed out carcass. He finally now understands that Ben has been a truth-telling junkie this whole time, but he comes to this realization just as Sarah appears behind him and reduces his kidney function by 50%. Then he's the victim of an epic choking, from which the witch peeks out at the last moment, only to be saved by Ben coming in guns blazing, as he puts all that Fortnite practice to good use. And then they witness the miracle of birth. As they drive off, we get a big reveal here that Ben has a younger brother who's been missing this whole time, forgotten due to the witch's influence. Ben goes to the woods to try to save him and finds Mallory there, now remembering her sister. When they find the magical tree, he ventures into its dark recesses and eventually finds Nathan, sending him out to safety. He lingers within the bowels of the tree and eventually finds Lily, but freeing her requires a confrontation with the witch, who they repel with a classic Polaroid flash antler stab battle combo. As they emerge, they keep her back with some salt, giving just enough time for Liam to take advantage of her biggest weakness, a truck to the face. In the end, we see they're all moving on and getting treatment, and that they burned a tree to free themselves of the witch's curse. Ben says his goodbyes to Mallory before heading off with his mom and dad. However, when he leaves, we see that his special little memento is actually made of plastic, leaving us with the insinuation that he possibly made out with a nasty old witch. I have a website set up where you can support the channel through donations or merch. I'd like to take a moment to give a huge thanks to my donors memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. The Wretched is a pretty good direct-to-home release. There was a nice, well-thought-out mythology here and a good twist. It just seemed like the filmmakers may have lost themselves a bit in the convolutions of the plot. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.